Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this morning and afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from within the country. We are really excited to be able to join you again with our good friend Dan Gaines from the Crm School at Purdue. We'll be revisiting the presentation that we shared last week at the American Marketing Association's Higher Ed Conference in Las Vegas. So for those of you that were able to attend and that we met, hello again. For those new friends, welcome. With that, we have just about 15 to 20 minutes of a presentation, including a demo of some really impactful AI chatbot technology that Purdue has deployed with some pretty fantastic ROI and results that Dan will be sharing. If you do have questions, please feel free to type any questions in. We will go ahead and revisit questions at the end of the presentation. Dan, anything that you'd like to add before I hop on in?
No, I'm just looking forward to sharing again.
All right, fantastic. All right, so today we're talking about building connections with Gen Zs, with folks that we actually call true digital natives today. The premise that we're all moving upon is, as we think about communicating with prospective students, with our current students, even with parents and alumni, really any individuals who fall within our ecosystem, we all expect a real-time experience today. So what does that look like? When we think about different ways to actually communicate with folks, we all have our phones in our hands, in our pockets, really almost 24/7. However, the fact that we call it a phone is almost a misnomer these days. Only 5% of phone calls are actually answered. Unfortunately, we all rely on email. Email isn't that much better. About 14% of email messages are opened, and that doesn't even account for response rates. So especially as we think about early on, as we're trying to engage prospective students, how do we think about communicating with them? We're seeing so much success today in the actualization of mobile messaging, or SMS, a fancy word to actually to note text messages. 98% of text messages are read within 2 minutes, and then we see pretty incredible response rates. So as we think about how to communicate with our prospective and current students, we see such value, such power in text messages. To really bring that home, consumers actually note that they are 60 times faster in responding to text messages. There's immediacy there. It's a short form. We can actually chat in short form versus a more formal communication channel like email, where we're 3 times more likely to even respond to a text message than email. So as we think about the marriage of this advancement in communication, how do we tie that back to technology? So 20 years ago, we all were building web apps. Web apps was the way to actually actualize this power of technology and communication. 10 years ago, with the advent of the iPhone, that transitioned into building mobile applications. Today, we've actually taken it one step further. So instead of having an app that we have to download, we actually see that Americans are far more likely to have less apps month over month than add apps. So we're deleting versus adding new mobile phone apps, more downloads. How do we get in touch with folks? There are new ways through messaging platforms or text message to actually engage in a personalized, real-time, on-demand kind of channel. So what does that look like for Gen Z? So what's so fascinating with Gen Z, they can't remember a time before texting and social media. We all sit around the office sometimes and talk about the first text that we received. We all remember our first engagement over these new communication channels. Gen Z doesn't. It's just native to the way that they have been raised. Smartphones are intuitive to the way that they carry about their day-to-day lives. One-to-one communication, this is really interesting, I think, actually. Potentially, in contrary to popular belief, one-to-one communication is highly valued. However, we certainly, as Gen Z folks, don't want one-to-one communication in person. So it's really important, as we think about engaging with Gen Z, to have personalized and concrete messages, a way to develop a relationship, but we don't want to do it in person. We don't even want to do it over the phone. We also are insanely, we demand instantaneous communication. So we are so impatient. So we really think about these folks as being the first true digital natives. When we think about what's happened over the past 5 or 6 years, as we think about communication, we see that in person, and that includes phone communications, have gone down, but we're seeing an increase, a substantial increase in text messaging, also social media, and video chat. So what does that really look like? So Gen Z actually says 50% of these folks are texting almost constantly. And I think any of us who have friends or children that fall into those categories, we see our CEO often jokes, I have to text my son to get him to check his email. We are so likely to use our phone over any other communication channel. So the big challenge becomes, how do we take these new communication tools at our fingertips, marry our marriage, frankly, to our phones, and the need to have immediacy. We talk about an average internet user will actually jump from one experience to another within 8 seconds. So if we're asking questions and we're not getting answers within 8 seconds online, we're likely to abandon. I don't know how we know this, but we've actually said goldfish actually have longer attention spans than we as humans do. So we're really in this bizarre sort of complex of scenarios where we need to think about how to engage our prospective students. So with that set up, I'm going to very quickly turn it over to my friend Dan at Purdue to talk about how he and his colleagues at Crm have taken concrete steps to try new technologies and new ways to engage Gen Z.
Thank you, Kelly. So to give everyone some context, I lead a very small marketing team within the Crm School of Management, and we manage the marketing for the graduate programs here. So that's 3 MBAs and 7 specialized masters. Next slide, please. So at Crm, we faced some unique challenges. The first, as Kelly's been speaking about, was really engaging the Gen Z audience, or those that were on the cusp, so millennials that were, exhibiting more Gen Z characteristics. In fact, a lot of the millennials we've been engaging in recent years have been more Gen Z than they have millennials in the ways they're communicating. So we needed to find a way to engage them in an interface that they preferred. The second was we wanted to engage with prospective students all around the world, but we didn't have the capability to add staff to engage with those students at all hours of the day. Similarly, we also wanted to open a rich channel of rich conversation, but we didn't have the large team needed to engage in those kinds of conversations with students all the time. So, and then lastly, we wanted to keep users on our website. We wanted to make it a more informative experience, make sure that we were addressing all questions. Again, we needed to be able to do that at all times. So I'm sure we're all familiar with a graphic like this. That basically, it just demonstrates we spend so much of our time and energy trying to generate interest in whether it's our graduate programs or our university. And then once we do that, the prospective students, the parents, whatever, they enter this vacuum of where they just have so many questions and they can't find the answers that they need. And we realize that this is where a lot of prospective students, a lot of applicants are won or lost. And so we wanted to create a way to mitigate the losses there and to get some more wins for students, not just to apply, all the way to bringing students here on campus. And so that solution for us has been the real-time experiences provided by AtlasRTX Chatbot. So we're going to just do a brief demonstration of what our chatbot looks like. So Kelly's going to play that up. But so our chatbot is what we call an authenticated chatbot. So you have to provide your information, first name, last name, email, phone number. And the reason that we ask for phone number is if the user leaves the website that they're engaging with us on, if they leave the website, then we can follow up by texting them, and so continue that conversation over text. If the bot isn't able to answer a question, then we can also follow up at any time and just engage in text. And so the chatbot provides opportunities ours provides a navigation menu if you want to use that, but you can also type in questions. And based on keywords, the bot will generate the answer. And so we have questions like how much does it cost, or what are the requirements, and it directs the user to the answer. Sometimes it directs them directly to the web page where they can find that answer. And if unable to answer the question, a human is engaged. A human on our team is pinged, and then we can follow up with answers. And again, one of the things we love is the 24/7 aspect. So if we're out of the office on the weekend, whatever, the chatbot answers those questions. It also answers in over 100 different languages. We've had many conversations with students all over the world. They're speaking to us in a different language, and we're responding, and it automatically, the bot, the program will send it to them in their native language that they've been speaking to us in. And we've also engaged our graduate assistants. They are the ones following up now. So it's created some really unique interactions with prospective students, with our current students. Atlas also provides some great analytics. It helps us to learn how people are conversing with us, and just even generally, the bot itself is informing us on ways that we can improve our communications in responding to prospective students. So that's a quick rundown of our chatbot, an example of. But we've been really encouraged by the early returns that we received. So just again, to give you context, we set up our chatbot in March of 2019. That's when it was launched. So we weren't really expecting much returns for the 2019 term, just not sure. We were looking for more for future terms. However, the bot made an immediate impact. We saw over 8% increase in conversions to converted students. So from the chatbot, so after we had 8.3% of the chatbot users that engaged with us, they started an application and were converted into a student. We noticed that there were over 50% of users engaged with us outside of business hours. So they were able to get the answers that they needed directly from the bot during a time that we couldn't answer them as humans in the office. And then we also noticed that over half of engagements were handled by the bot alone. So there was no need for human interaction. The bot was able to answer all questions. And of course, we do follow up as a person on all these, but the bot was able to answer all their needs in each interaction. So now, the other interesting thing that we noticed was that users were 51.2% more students engaged with the chatbot versus submitting their information via a traditional information request form. So we've all got those forms, request for more information, you fill out this form, but users were more, once we launched the chatbot, they were gravitating towards the chatbot, which we still request the same information. Being an authenticated version of the chatbot, we request the same information of name, email, phone number, but they were more likely to use the chatbot than they were the web form. And then there's a second part of this story. So, we saw the early returns for 2019 entry term. But for 2020, the early signs are really encouraging as well. So we're having a good year so far, over 30% increase in inquiries, and the chatbot is contributing towards more than almost 70% of that increase. So we're really excited to see how that converts those into applications. We're already seeing, even though it's very early, just in November, but we've seen a growth in applications, and the chatbot is a significant portion of that. We're seeing 17.4% of those applications being driven by the chatbot, and we expect that number to increase as the cycle matures. And so, as you can see, the chatbot's been a really important teammate for us, and Atlas has been a great partner in helping us with our needs.
Dan, thank you for that. Without being in the actual room, it feels like we were so short and speedy, but I will say the Atlas team is always so proud. Your results frankly surprised even us, and I realize we're only 6 to 7, 8 months live, so we're really looking forward to the next 12 months to see what kind of further results come. So thank you all. With that, let me open it up for questions. I know we have a couple that have come in. I'm actually gonna have to pause the stream here for a moment just so I can review those questions. And Dan, I'll top them over your way. We have a question about digital privacy GDPR statements. So Dan, can you talk a little bit about how you all have addressed privacy and taking your policies from the website into the chatbot experience as well?
So we do, when they fill out the form, there is a form there is a note that says that they're providing their information for us to follow up. So we're not just collecting their information. There's a pretty clear note, so that they know, they know that they're providing this for follow-up, their information for follow-up. So it is pretty clear, and we haven't had any issues where somebody's saying, said that you shouldn't have my information or anything like that. Because of the real-time nature of it, people know I filled out this form. I'm asking to talk to a chatbot, or I'm asking to talk to a person, and so there is again the immediacy, the expectation that they're going to get information, and so we're providing that. So yeah.
Brilliant. We've got a couple more. Clearly, a technology savvy group on the phone here. So, did the chatbot plugin affect your site speed? Let me share just the first half of that. So, we've tried to make it on the Atlas side. We've tried to make it very simple to include the chatbot technology within your site. It's simply just a snippet that your IT team needs to put to load. But Dan, can you talk a little bit about any effects you saw on the website speed?
Yeah, we haven't noticed any real lag or anything like that in the website load time. As Kelly said, this is a very simple code. It doesn't really, it may take like a second for the bot to appear on the page, but it hasn't really impacted the load time.
Thank you. Also, on the website piece, can you talk about the chatbot and how you all talked about making sure that it complies with any ADA requirements?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, yeah. Was that a part of your consideration on the Purdue side?
Yeah, definitely. That's an extremely important part. In fact, we had to have it vetted through our Purdue, and then we talked to Atlas about that, expressing that as a concern, and the way they developed the bot. It's all within ADA, the WCAG 2.0 or whatever requirements. So whatever the current requirements, they vetted it for that. So yeah.
Perfect. Have you all at Purdue done any retargeting for those prospective students who have engaged with the chatbot? Or I guess even at a broader level, have you integrated the chatbot into your bigger marketing efforts as you're looking at increasing enrollment?
Yeah, so some of the things that we're they obviously are in our pipeline for, once they've submitted their information. So we are following up with our automated communications. That includes some retargeting. We also are working with Atlas to develop a tool that we can, a follow-up text where we can schedule an appointment to talk further with one of our recruiters. So we're working on a variety of things. These are, very hot leads, very interested leads, because they're on our website, they're investigating us, they're researching. We want to have, they're very interested, so we want to follow up quickly. So we're still in development of some of that, but yeah, those are all in consideration, and we're working towards several things right now.
With that, have you all instituted, if you'll speak on behalf of Purdue, and then I can speak on behalf of the capabilities of the technology, have you all instituted a survey at the end of the chatbot asking how the experience was for that user?
Yeah, we had considered that, but instead we had decided to go the route of a follow-up text, again, with trying to engage with a recruiter. We've also talked about, user feedback on that. But one thing that we have noticed is, people on the bot will converse, and so they will tell us if something's not coming through correctly, or it's been really valuable as a constant feedback loop for our website. So that if we get a constant question that someone's asking, then we know, well, that information is probably not it's probably not buried on our website somewhere. We need to bring it to the surface. So, there is an element of that built into the natural conversations that you have. But we are, that is something that we have also considered. Yeah.
Certainly. I think kind of to that point, Dan, will you talk a little bit about how we kicked off, how long it took for us to actually go from deciding this would make a lot of sense to getting live on your site through UAT testing as well?
Yeah, so it took us, I'd say, about a month of really dedicated effort. And again, this is for the master's, MBA and master's program. It's not site-wide yet. The success we've seen as the next phase, it likely is the expand it site-wide. So, but it took us about a month, and basically we started with our Q&As and common questions that our admissions team would get or our recruiters would get. We sat down with them, generated what does that conversation need to look like in the bot? What do we need information we need to provide? And we did leave intentional gaps in that. We don't want the bot to answer every question. There are certain questions we want to have a conversation with a human. So we strategically built that out. And then, again, that took about a month. We also, in the meantime, again, Atlas was checking on things like making sure that before we signed any contracts or anything that was accessible, ADA compliant, all those kinds of things. So doing everything on their end. And then once we got everything loaded, we did about 2 months of user testing. Again, we had students test it. We had our staff test it. We just did a variety of things to test the bot and to make sure that it was giving the responses that we wanted, answering the questions that we wanted. But we've been refining the bot continuously afterward, but after that 2 months, we felt like we had a product that we can launch, and just started watching engagement. And yeah, so there's been ongoing refinement to the bot. But again, we don't change the bot based on every response that it's not answering. Again, some questions we don't want it to answer. We want to get humans engaged at certain points. But it also, the AI built into the bot, it is actually learning. So it's starting to answer questions and it's a really interesting way. It's doing amazing. I don't know how it does it. The Atlas team, they know all that, but I am constantly checking through just to double check conversations and things, and the bot's figuring things out, and it's answering things in awesome ways. It's really cool.
we've got about 7 questions in the queue, so I just want you folks to know that I will certainly answer all the questions that are here. Dan, you're teeing up so many great questions that are coming in. Maybe the next one to tackle, are you able to export the questions and the conversations that are happening on the chatbot to inform some of your other efforts, email content, FAQ page, etc.?
Yeah, so we do that. We export that into, we use Slate, so we export that in the student record, and then we're able to pull that information. And a lot of the times we're doing more real-time response as far as like, documenting things that we need to develop as far as content as things are coming in, but we do collect that data as well. So you can collect both sides of the conversation, our side of the conversation, the bot, and also the other side, where, the user. So you get a pretty comprehensive export, I would say, and yeah, so we do have that.
Brilliant. I'll tackle 2 questions at once here. We had a question about CRM integration in Salesforce specifically. We have not with Purdue done a direct integration into Slate. However, that is highly possible. We've integrated into Atlas, has integrated into most all major CRMs from Salesforce to Microsoft Dynamics to Oracle, and certainly higher education specific major business systems as well. For the Salesforce specific question, we're actually listed on the Salesforce App Exchange. For any major CRM system, most institutions have done some sort of specific configuration on your end where there's a little bit of custom work, but hopefully we can do most of the heavy lifting. So major business system integration is usually bread and butter for any of our chatbots.
Kelly, can I also comment on that?
Please.
So the fact that we're not doing direct imports is not a function of Atlas's that they're not capable. That's not the case. That is the case of our instance of we use Slate, but our instance of Slate is managed by our graduate school, and they're not allowing for API connections into Slate. So we do all of our imports manually. So that's a whole different story, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify that's not on Atlas's end. That's just the system is how we do things here.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I'll do one really quickly as well. Can we brand the chatbot snippet? You have full control over branding, things like logos and colors. You can actually build personality into these chatbots. These chatbots are all handcrafted by the Atlas human team, actually. So when we talk about chatbots and humans better together, it's actually your institution working with Atlas to custom create your chatbot, as well as your team engaging with prospective students via the chatbot. So everything is fully in your control. We do have the capability to even build in jokes and facts and trivia about your school and things like that. So we can certainly have some fun with it. I've got two big questions for you, Dan. The first one, I think this is a great one. If someone is chatting with the bot outside of regular business hours, the bot needs human engagement based on that question. How does Purdue handle that today?
So for the time being, we do have a bot program response that there was no one available at this time. It's outside of business hours. However, we have had people jump on and answer because we get pinged through an email. So I've actually responded on occasion to one that came in after business hours, but we do have a boilerplate message that says that it's past business hours, but someone will follow up, in the morning, So again, we do have those instances. We're working on internally how we can be more prompt from a human perspective. But again, it's not the bot. That's just we're catching up to the bot actually in building some of our response systems. But like the bot, I will say, as it answers 60% of the questions. And we've actually are seeing that gradually rise. And again, that's, I think, where the AI is coming into play, and it's starting to respond to things with remarkable accuracy. And so, but yeah, we're trying, it is actually narrowing that gap for us in some regards.
That's really powerful. I've got two two-pronged question here. I'll start with the second half. Have you found, because the chatbot is available on your website, maybe talk about where you've put the chatbot on the website and why? The specific question is, though, have you found that people don't look at your website content, your page, they go straight to the chatbot, and then maybe they miss important messaging that you were hoping those visitors would see?
Yeah, so we put it at the bottom right. So depending on the device, it'd appear more or less prominently. Depends on the device they're using. So I wouldn't say it's right in front of right out in front, but it's kind of available. So it's a very small icon, but it's large enough, and I think we've played around with the size of that, and just. Now we are in the process of looking at our web analytics to determine if there's any change as far as how people are navigating using the website. So we're still catching up on some of that. But early returns, I don't have a sense for whether it's taken away from the user experience. But yeah. So I don't have a great answer for that, but it's something we're still exploring, learning about.
Just to add on to that, if I may, Dan, one thing that I think is so powerful is there's both the option to have buttons as well as just truly free-form text within the chat. The buttons, as a marketer personally, I find great value, because if you do have a particular message that you want to communicate, and this can change dynamically, day to day, week to week, month to month, certainly season to season, you can change those buttons at any point in what would be a typical or ideal and desired conversation flow. So if you do have, gosh, we're just around the corner from the deadline, and you want to push that, you can change the button so that you're trying to map your main key messages to actually the desired flow of the chatbot as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I will say that the objective of the bot is to drive applications, and so that is a button on the bot, and we find that it's very interesting. You see if people click on 2 or 3 other buttons, or they do a little text entry, and then all of a sudden they're jumping to the how to apply. So the experience that they have on the bot is driving them, we know that it's driving them to apply. As we look over conversation after conversation, where they're getting the information they need, one way either through text or through the bubble menu, and then they're going to apply. And how to apply is by far the number one question that people are asking in the end.
Fantastic. I believe this is the last question, but if anyone else has anything else, feel free to please type in. This is maybe a question for both of us, Dan. So someone's asking, the school has multiple programs. Would you put the chatbot on the main page versus individual pages? And then how do you handle even things like finance versus enrollment and recruitment, what have you? Will you talk about the strategy for where you place the bot specifically, Dan, and then I can talk about the possibilities in terms of the structure?
Yeah, so we place it on all of our master's pages, but we're actually in conversation with Atlas as far as dropping it on certain pages and skipping certain levels of conversation. So if, for example, if they come in on accounting, we don't need to ask them what program they're interested in. They're on the accounting web page, and so they start that. It's an immediate conversation about the accounting program. So we're working with Atlas right now on that. But the current version we have is it's general. It starts with a conversation about what program, what are you looking for, kind of information. So as we expand the bot to across the school, there's a couple different ways we can go. But what we would probably do is more targeted, the bot knows what page they're on. Let's start a conversation there rather than start it from a more general general perspective.
Thank you for that. I think that's perfect. We call that here at Atlas a multimodal experience. That's actually very new and quite sophisticated for the space. But I do think as we think about our Gen Z targets here, when we think about the personalization these folks are looking for, we certainly do want context. So when they land at a particular page or particular program, it's really nice to have context for what they're looking for at that moment versus just in general. So I think that's a great answer there. I'm seeing the end of any. Let's see, maybe one more question came through. Is it possible to adjust the settings during regular business hours and use it as a live chat option if we wanted live chat for a few hours of the day? Do you want me to take that one, Dan, or would you like to speak to that?
Sure, you go ahead. Yep.
Sure. So a great question. You certainly can change the dynamic of the chatbot if you want it to just be live chat. We would argue that, or at least want to throw out there that I would imagine if we talk to folks who are answering questions within context of that page, so maybe it's web forms today, maybe it's live chat already, there are often 10 to 12 questions and or topics that are highly repeatable. So we think about the brilliance of AI automation. What really is solidifying for me is automate the repeatable, let humans jump in to augment and do what humans are really great at. So you certainly can have it just as a live chat option during business hours. However, we do find that once we actually get going, we've started there, a lot of the folks who are answering those chats are thrilled if those top 10 FAQs are taken care of by a bot. You can actually watch all active conversations via the Atlas platform in real time. And there are tools to show you where the bot is trained in taking care of those 10 or 12 topics, and then where the human needs to jump in. So the world's really your oyster here in terms of configuration. All right, that's all I'm seeing. Dan, is there anything else that this has sparred that you'd like to share with our colleagues here?
Yeah, I mean, it created quite I think a little bit of a buzz here on campus. You know, we're the first to jump into this technology, and we just found it was something we needed to try, and it's been, yeah, very rewarding. Again, we're seeing just really strong returns so far. So yeah, looking forward to how the bot grows for us.
We'll have to do a revisit of this topic in 6 months and see where we're at. I will say, again, just to reiterate, Dan, you've been a fantastic partner, but the results we're seeing are pretty incredible. We're very proud. That's really, it's a stand-up use case for us at Atlas. So I think there's huge potential in the higher ed space. So if you have questions, Dan, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but you've been so kind to answer questions from folks within the higher ed ecosystem. So happy to connect you directly with Dan. We'll send out the recording of this webinar to those folks who were on the phone with us. And then certainly if you have questions for Atlas or for Purdue, feel free to reach out to me. I don't believe I actually introduced myself. So my name is Kelly Suzuki. Happy to answer any questions in follow-up. I really appreciate this. Thanks so much, everyone.